You're listening to Stealing from Wizards, Volume 2, Burglary, by R.A. Consul. Chapter 26, Birds of a Feather. "Where are we going?" Marie demanded, jogging to keep up with Kuro. He hadn't expected her to follow him. After her inaugural flight, she'd seemed enthusiastic about having another. She'd unsummoned her familiar and was giddy from the absorbed experience. When Kuro announced he was going to go, however, he ended up with a train behind him. Marie was suspicious of his sudden need to leave, and the raccoon was reluctant to be left behind after finally being recognized. "I need to go take out a book from the library," explained Kuro. "It is closed for the night." Kuro shrugged off the complaint. He didn't need a librarian to check out a book. He knew how the system worked, and he didn't want to wait for the morning. He reached the school in the spring quarter, climbed up to the roof where the door was never locked, then back down to the library. He knew both books that he needed. He'd seen them earlier in the year. One was the book that Charlie had used to fail to predict familiars. The other was the one he'd needed for the alchemy project. His initial plan was to just check the information in them, there in the library. But that seemed rude with Marie waiting outside without any explanation. He didn't want to let on anything was amiss until he was very sure of himself. He signed, stamped, and filled out the book borrowing cards. He appreciated that he didn't need to make his own notes, and so he did his best to follow the orderly system of temporary theft at the library. Stowing the books in his bag, he exited the school via the library window and rejoined his friend at ground level. "You're being weird," accused Marie. "I just need to check something," he said. "You didn't have to follow me." "I thought you were going to go tell everybody what I was doing," said Marie. "I wouldn't do that," replied Kuro. Kuro started heading away from school. "Where are you going now?" "Back to the lodge. It's getting late." "Stop being weird." Kuro wasn't being weird. He just wasn't used to having someone follow him around when he was being his normal self. Despite her protests, Marie and the raccoon stuck with Kuro as he walked back across the island towards home, which slowed his trip considerably. "How was the flying?" Kuro asked when they were halfway through summer, thinking he should break the silence that had settled. "It was fine," said Marie, downplaying the experience. "I guess I see why people like it." "Think you'll do it again?" asked Kuro. "Probably," Marie grudgingly admitted. "Will you keep it a secret?" "I don't know." Kuro didn't have much skill with carrying on a conversation that the other party wasn't interested in maintaining, so he let their walk fall into silence. Eventually, Marie tired of the sound of pavement beneath their feet and started talking on her own. "What are you going to do about the raccoon?" Kuro was worrying about that himself. The whole lodge knew about the Dragonfey and thought it was his familiar. He couldn't have two familiars. "I probably need to tell Charlie and Arthur," he said. "They'll find out eventually anyway. Arthur will think I'm doing crimes and Charlie will just tell everybody if she doesn't know it's a secret." Marie nodded along. The next thing she said took her a couple of tries to get started. "Do you want to tell them together?" "Yes!" Kuro agreed almost too enthusiastically. That seemed like an excellent plan. It would help take some attention away from his story and, hopefully, if he was right, help Marie feel better about things. Marie rambled about the plan and what they were going to say for the rest of the walk back to the lodge. There were parts of her story that she wanted to skip to avoid embarrassment, and things Kuro should and shouldn't add to back her up. In the end, Kuro's only real job was to nod and not contradict her. That was something he was well suited to. They arrived at the lodge and lost a bit of momentum at the door. The raccoon couldn't get in. The salt-laced bricks around the foundation of the building prevented magical creatures, including familiars, from crossing the threshold. That explained why the stolen goods had just been thrown into his room through a forced open window, but it left them with a problem. Kuro couldn't unsummon it, which was the usual way to get them in and out of salted buildings. They puzzled over it for a minute until Kuro remembered that he'd already smuggled a familiar into the building. He let the raccoon crawl into his book bag along with the currently napping Dragonfey. Marie fetched Charlie, who was up late reading, and Kuro woke Arthur, who always went to sleep early. They used the boys' room for privacy and spoke in hushed tones. Kuro went first, introducing the raccoon and explaining away the dragon fae as best he could. Everyone assumed it was a first-year student, and Kuro didn't do anything to dismiss that belief. He could see both Charlie and Arthur struggle not to demand to know who it was, Charlie out of a desperate curiosity, Arthur out of a sense of duty. Kuro didn't know whether it was illegal for someone to summon a familiar early, but the way Arthur wrestled with it, he thought it might be. The raccoon did a good job of breaking the tension. "It's great!" Charlie squealed, failing to keep her voice down. "It's so furry and cute. What are you going to name it? Can I name it? Oh, it smells terrible. We should give it a bath." She ran to fetch a bucket and a brush, lost in her excitement for animal care. Arthur had almost the opposite reaction. He pulled out his notes on the burglaries and turned to the pages on the raccoon. He peered at the creature, and most specifically at its paws. "Those paws are the same as the ones on the stolen things," he said. "Yeah," said Kuro. "But I don't think it's the burglar. It didn't exist until after Samhain. I think it just found the stuff." Arthur looked back at his roommate with a renewed suspicion. Kuro could tell that he was thinking the same thing Kuro was worried about. To save his friend the accusation, Kuro offered it to him. "It might be me," he said, "but if it is, I don't remember." Kuro explained his fears as Charlie scrubbed the swamp funk off the raccoon. Charlie thought the theory was preposterous, but loved it anyway. Arthur took it much more seriously, but did something that eased Kuro's heart. He didn't write anything down. He didn't make a single note of the possible confessions to serial crimes, and his only comment was, "I haven't seen any evidence to support that." For Arthur, that was the equivalent of giving Kuro a hug and a handmade pillow that had "Best Friends Forever" embroidered on it. That left Marie to make her confession. She fidgeted a bit and then put on her serious face to hide her fears. "I have a familiar too," she said simply, entirely abandoning the plans she had made for crafting an elaborate story. "It's not cool like yours though." "Oh, congratulations!" Charlie flung her hands up in celebration, splashing soapy water in the air as she did it and startling the raccoon. "What is it? Can we see it? Will it fit in here?" Marie agreed, but it took a while for her to get the nerves under control. Even with Charlie exuberantly scrubbing a filthy raccoon, she still worried about the judgment of her roommate. Kuro took that time to leaf through the books he had taken out. He heard the spell conclude just as he found the page he was looking for. He looked up to see his friend slack-jawed and silent. Arthur was the first to speak. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked. "Yeah," said Marie. "Just that crow?" Charlie burst out laughing. It helped confirm Kuro's suspicions, but was extremely unhelpful. Marie fought to keep her composure. "Don't laugh at me," she said, her voice cracking. Charlie didn't stop. Instead, she threw her arms around Marie and all but collapsed in hysterics on her roommate. "You city kids," she managed to say between outbursts. Marie pushed her off. "So what if I am?" she demanded. Kuro thought it was time to intervene before the shouts brought attention. He tugged gently on Marie's sleeve and pushed the book into her hands. "It's not a crow," he said, trying to strike a gentle tone that she wouldn't take as an insult. She looked between him and the book he'd just given her in bemusement several times, before her upset died enough to read the page heading. Identification of corvids, distinguishing crows and ravens. Marie still looked around, confused and ashamed at not understanding. "It's a raven," Arthur explained unhelpfully. Kuro pulled out the library book on familiars and found the page on ravens. "Oh, please let me tell her," said Charlie, wiping tears from her eyes. "I feel really bad for laughing." Kuro handed over the book, and Charlie cleared her throat. In her best story-reading voice, she recited, "Ravens are among the most prized familiars, being associated with wizards of great power and genius, creators and destroyers of kingdoms. Known wizards with raven familiars include Stolas, Odin Borson, and Morgan Le Fay." Marie didn't know how to react. She just stared at the big black bird before her, which she'd spent months trying to change. "I have heard of some of them," she said after a while. "Of course, this book is mostly nonsense," Charlie said smugly, reminding Marie of her earlier evaluation of the work. "Mostly. Anyway, your familiar's super cool. Want to go flying with Henrietta tomorrow after class? Marie took her time deciding whether she was ready to let go of her jealousy of the majestic winged unicorn, but eventually conceded with conditions. Will you let me give her rainbow-colored wings? Oh my gosh, yes! Shouted Charlie. Are you going to name your familiar? Can I name it? What do you think of Ravenous, the queen of the night? Or maybe Betty? Marie ignored her roommate and turned on Kuro. You knew, she accused him. You knew and you didn't tell me? I suspected, Kuro defended. That's why I needed the books. I've only seen one crow and one raven up close. She growled and hugged him at the same time. It's a good thing I like you, she said. With all his friends smiling with each other for the first time in months, Kuro slept easily. Even with a damp raccoon sleeping next to him and a fussy dragonfey chained to his bed, he didn't stir until morning. Thank you for listening to Stealing from Wizards. If you liked our show, please consider rating or reviewing on iTunes. If you want to support this podcast or just can't wait for the next chapter, the full book is available on Amazon, Kobo, and Indigo. Our theme music was written by Camille Saint-Saëns, transcribed by Franz Liszt, performed by Rebecca Verdun, and used with permission. This episode was produced by Jim Tigwell.